I have you now.
They want to mess with my droid. They're going to pay for it.
This is the way.
You may fire when ready.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky!
The way you're fighting, you wouldn't have lasted long.
Hello there.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
Well, it's about time we get around to this one. It's something I've been wanting to talk about for a long, long time. This book's been out since the end of August, but we had the audiobook version sent to us a couple days early from its release, and now we're finally going to get to dive into it with you guys. With Ahsoka in the rearview mirror, we can start focusing on some different Star Wars stories, and we're continuing our station's 40th anniversary celebration of my favorite Star Wars movie with the best way we can possibly celebrate it. If you're not familiar with the From a Certain Point of View books, or FACPOV for short, then I'm going to tell you that they are some of the most quintessentially Star Wars pieces of storytelling out there. If you haven't read them, you've got to read them. Even just excerpts, just of maybe your favorite characters. Because we as fans, we always talk about what makes Star Wars Star Wars. The deep, abstract mysteries of the Force, the really simple and true dichotomy of black and white, good versus evil conflict. It's the visual language, it's the ships and the speed at which the ships move, but also the speed at which the movies move. But all of those are part of the ingredients that make up Star Wars' success. But one of the ingredients we always talk about on this podcast all the time, that is absolutely worth mentioning right now, is the lived-in universe that George created. And he was able to put every ship on screen has a story, every animal and species has a biology, and every character has a life. Luke Skywalker has a life, but the background alien in the cantina has a life story, his backstory. There's something that motivates him, and that's one of the many reasons that Star Wars connects with people, is because it's believable. It's because we see, just because they're an alien and they have a hammerhead or a prune face or something like that, it doesn't mean that they don't have believable lives and problems, and these detailed backstories are what show us these lives and problems. But FACPOV takes it a step further. They give us 40 stories from 40 different unique perspectives of characters that appear in the original trilogy movies. They're released on the 40th anniversary of each of the films, and so these books tell stories from the perspective of main characters, characters with a single line of dialogue, characters in the background of shots, and even some of the creatures in the movies get stories. And so the concept blew me away when they first did it with the 40th anniversary of the first Star Wars movie, and it blew me away a second time when they did it for Empire. And now we're getting to talk about it for my favorite film. My favorite movie got the FACPOV treatment, and I'm super excited to dive in. But I'm not the only one who got their hands on a copy of this and dove right in. My esteemed co-host got to read this as his very first FACPOV. So let's hear what he has to say. It's Max Rebo's roadie himself, Colin Archer.
Hey, man, this one was such a fun read, and we got a lot to say about this. I had so much fun. Like you said, we got to listen to it early, and I think we both really enjoyed that. And there's so much stuff going on here. I'm lost. I'm trying to think about which ones I like the most, and all this different aspects that we're going to cover. But yeah, getting the opportunity to do this in a podcast, and now I've got to go do all the other ones, and I guess wait how many years for the next one to come out?
Right. We got 15 years for the... No, sorry, not 15. 25 years for the Phantom Menace.
Yeah. So we got a long build-up for that one, right? But we're going to have so much fun when those come out as well.
Yeah, no, it's going to be great. So we're gonna hop into this, and we're going to talk about this book. This isn't like a normal review because these are 40 separate stories. It's really difficult to give it a book review. That's in the order of how these would appear in the movie. And so this isn't going to be like a ranking game either, though. We're not A tier, S tier, B tier-ing any of these stories. Because for me, at least, a bunch of them change on the day with how I'm feeling on which one was my favorite or which one resonated with me. And so it's too difficult to get into something like that. And these stories are all super different. There's serious stories, heroic stories, romantic ones, thoughtful ones. There's comedy ones, which we're going to get into at the beginning.
Harrowing ones.
Harrowing ones. I mean, there's all kinds of stories in this book that are a lot of fun and that connect to Star Wars in different ways. And so I'll say that you got to be warned if you're going to dive in. There's a couple stinkers, as there are in everything, and it happens. And I'm not naming any names. We're not going to dwell any time on some of the stories that didn't connect with us because they might have connected with somebody else. But with that being said, Colin, I want to know what story made you laugh the most. What was the funniest story that you found in FactPov?
Man, so this is going to be a slight problem. There's one that I sat there and laughed out loud at. And I'm having the hardest time remembering which one it was because there's just like so many.
Oh, yeah. They're back to back to back. And some of them are pretty short.
Yeah. Okay, so this is going to be the one that made me laugh the most. And it's because I saw what was happening at the very onset of this. And granted, we listened to this. This one's in the book. It appears as a comic. So I think you actually have to pick up the book and read it a little bit. But it's Admiral Akbar. He's like super serious at the start of this, talking about, as I lead my team out of hyperspace, I consider the lives under my care.
That was a nice getting into the voice right there. Yes. You were trying your Akbar best.
These aren't just soldiers; they're parents, siblings, grandchildren, neighbors, spouses, and so it's this thing that starts out like super serious, but then it just nosedives off a cliff to it's a trap. It's so funny.
It's a good one, and it's short. And you know, I know in The Empire Strikes Back one, I'm pretty sure in the New Hope one that there's a comic in every single one, and that they get a little bit. It's like a newspaper comic essentially, the length of it, and so
it's Sunday afternoon one.
Yeah, exactly, and so it's super cool to get to just read the comic and get to see the comedy of, because that's how Akbar would have felt in the moment anyway. These are all true to character stories.
Yeah, no, they really are. And I mean, and especially if you're this wizened, highly decorated admiral and you're thrust into a no-win situation. I mean, what else are you going to say?
Right,
but the whole thing is such a meme that the comic is in on the joke, right? Mm-hmm. That makes it so worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you. My favorite one, the one I thought was the funniest, was the story by Charlie Jane Anders, and it's called My Mouth Never Closes. Like I said, we listened to this. Our good friend Mark Thompson narrated this, and he did a great job. I mean, he did a phenomenal job, I thought, because the thing that made this story so funny, and it was hilarious, is the fact that Mark Thompson is telling this story from the perspective of the Sarlacc pit, and it has a surfer bro accent. And
California dude, bro, is how I put it.
Exactly.
Let me interject. I'm sorry. You know what that means, right?
What's that?
Just like all the Rylothians were French.
Mm-hmm. All Sarlaccs sound like they're from
California
Malibu Beach.
Dude bros.
That's funny.
When I had that realization, it made it really funny.
Yeah, it is funny. I thought it was super funny. You can't always take Star Wars too seriously, and that's why we opened up with the comedy ones, because there's comedic moments in all the movies. There's definitely ways to tell comedy, and one of the ways they like to tell comedy is through their creatures. I mean, they're there for danger and suspense, obviously, but like R2-D2 getting spit out by the creature on Dagobah. Like the animals and the droids often serve as comedy relief. And so
that story's in here too.
Yeah, yes. Or that's
Bright Eyes.
No, that one's in the Bright Eyes. Bright Eyes is the character that did that, but it's in the Empire Strikes Back one. Yes, okay. But Bright Eyes is the same animal because
she has a story
first
here
perspective
too.
Is in the Empire one. But you know, Mark Thompson just really leaned into the weird and funny by giving the Sarlacc a surfer guy accent. And you know, we interviewed him weeks ago, and he said that most of those accents he just gets to come up with if there's not someone like Thrawn, where we haven't seen him on screen, but you really needed to mimic a certain way he spoke, or a way you would expect him to spoke, or obviously Han Solo, who sounds a certain way,
right.
But with new characters that have never been voiced for, he basically just gets to pick. So I imagine he picked the Surfer Bro one.
And so the big thing with this is that it's from a certain point of view, and this is the point of view of the Sarlacc. And so we had a discussion pre-show about this to get all on the same page, right? And it's up until this point in the conversation, I was really put off by that, and
That's true. You did tell me, which I was floored by.
It was basically me not being aware of my own presuppositions, because my point of view is that the Sarlacc is extremely scary and it's something I don't want to mess with. Well, I've got to throw my presuppositions out the window, because this is from the Sarlacc's point of view. And I mean, the story is, I think, really, really great. You know, how I got there.
Mm-hmm. We get some lore. We get some good Tatooine lore. We get a lot of info.
What its little purpose is. I mean, and he even says to C-3PO at the end, let's create an ecosystem here. Mm-hmm. And so that's all this character, and we can presume all the Sarlacc characters are for, is just to be part of their own ecosystem out in the galaxy.
Right.
And so... as stewards of our environment, that's something we need to be cognizant of, right?
Right. It's a good moral lesson right there.
Yeah. It's cool to have a perspective of something that on the outset looks extremely scary and gross, but when you get a C-3PO droid you get a protocol droid to actually talk to it, you realize it's not.
Well, and as you mentioned, it's from its point of view. It doesn't think it's scary, and it's a vegetarian, in fact, which was super fun. Not just Mark's performance makes this funny. The whole premise, the story, talks about how Tatooine used to be a tropical plant. Leaves just fell in its mouth, and now it's it misses being a vegetarian. These people are just shoved in its mouth without its consent. And C-3PO speaks its sign language, is the way that they're communicating. The whole thing is just hilarious. I thought the story was really good.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of really good comedy stories in the book. We have some honorable mentions, and one of the ones that we actually talked about, because it's near the very beginning, is the Max Rebo story.
Yes.
It is super funny, and its production is also very good, because the music, as you would expect in a Max Rebo production, is absolute heat. The soundtrack just for that little story is complete fire. It was so good.
It really was. I had fun with that. What was the controversy with that one?
Oh, this one had a big controversy.
Yeah,
Are you going to say it, or am I
I'll say it. I don't mind. I'm not shy at all. So, I don't know the lore of it like you do, but this is Star Wars. It's not 100% analog, but it's close. Mm-hmm. So the music, which is a play on jazz from our American culture, is in Star Wars is translated as jizz. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so the controversy is it's called...
They change it to jats.
They change it or add to it. What he was doing is called jats. Mm-hmm. And so, in the past, it was overtly jizz, and now it's jats. We can, I guess, comfortably say, or it's
I don't
something
think
he
it's a
does
change.
extra.
I think it's like a cultural thing. It's like some worlds, like Tatooine, call it jizz. Other worlds, like Max Rebo's homeworld, call it jats. And when you have, it's like in the real world, we have this country and Western music. Is it country music? Is it Western music? There's all kinds of evidence of things like that. And so it's the same. I think it's the same genre. It's just, named different in different places.
Yeah. But the whole story was, despite that little, that's just a road bump of a controversy, if you ask me. Getting to learn about Ortolans and their home world, how their little culture.
Yeah.
I think was really funny.
They got like a main street and regular houses.
Well, they don't wear clothes.
Yeah, and they don't wear any clothes.
Yeah. So, it explains his little character perfectly.
Right. He talks about how it's super weird if they're wearing clothes. We also get the details on how he survived the sail barge, since we know Max Rebo gets blown up a second time in the Book of Boba Fett. And there's a chase scene in this that sounded like it was straight out of Magnum P.I. It was a total 70s sounding chase scene. Is Magnum P.I. from the 70s?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Good on me for getting that right. I had no idea.
He drove a Ferrari around. That's why people liked, and he was a big, hairy guy.
Oh, I got. Yeah, he was. And the mustache, right? Tom Selleck,
yeah, Tom
right?
Selleck.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So there's another. So they kind of front-ended all the comedy ones. They're not all front-ended. There's a couple with the Empire. But, as Jabba's Palace is a little less serious, so too will all of the stories kind of be front-loaded. And so Salacious B. Crumbs was another super funny one. It explains how he's Jabba's court jester and how he's like pseudo-sentient. Like he knows what's going on, but only kinda. He's kind of dumb. He's like, I don't know. He's like a little kid. And I don't mean to call little kids dumb, but you know what I mean? like Sal B. Crumb seems like and Salacious B. Crumb, but he seems like he's got like the capacity of a 6-year-old. Like, he's like, oh, yeah, when they laugh, they feed me. And,
Yeah.
like, that's all that really matters. And so that one was funny. And there's another story about a stormtrooper who invented guardrails. And that was laugh out loud hilarious. I thought that one was really good, too.
Yeah.
Or I guess he's not a stormtrooper. He's a Death Star technician.
He's a Death Star gunner.
Death Star gunner.
And
yes.
he had been a gunner on a lot of other ships. Another honorable mention of mine was Trooper Trouble.
That's the one narrated by Adam Scott?
Adam Scott,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And it's told by log entries of just a stormtrooper on DS2. And, I mean, it's a daily journal, pretty much. And they run out of calf. But the funny part is he's tortured by an astromech droid the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even at the end, it zooms by him to get into an escape pod to go down on Endor. And he's locked out. And it basically laughs at him as it goes down to the moon. I thought it was hilarious.
And Adam Scott lent a lot of good comedy to that one, too.
He
So
did.
the audiobook is really worth listening to, only because they get some big actors to voice some of these characters. And they fill, I mean, Mark Thompson narrates a handful. And Sam Witwer, they made sure narrated the Palpatine one. Like, they have a lot of really good entries into this. And the audiobook is just really high production.
And it's all Star Wars narration veterans.
Yes,
that are out there.
Yeah, if they're not big
all
actors,
this.
then they're vets, like you said. Speaking of veterans, we're going to get into that was a great segue. I couldn't ask for a better segue, because we're going to get into the sad stories, because we talked about the funny ones. And there were some moving, sad stories in here. And so the reason that was such a good segue is my saddest story is The Veteran by Adam Lance Garcia. This one's towards the very end of the book. I think it's third to last or second to last.
Wasn't this one so cool, just out of nowhere
out
like
of
that?
Nowhere. I know. It's like so I knew it was coming because of the leaks on Twitter, and not even leaks. I mean, of the official press on Twitter and everything else.
Right.
But if you don't know it's coming, and it's still cool no matter what, but I couldn't imagine if I didn't know it was coming. Just the reveal of the character it's about would have been phenomenal. But The Veteran is by Adam Lance Garcia, and it's a really interesting story because he tells it from the perspective of Dexter Jetster. And the character didn't exist when The Return of the Jedi came out. He wouldn't exist for another 19 years until after it came out. And so the story is about Dexter Jetster. He is the four-armed basilisk diner owner in Attack of the Clones that Obi-Wan goes and visits and talks to. He's kind of a fan-favorite character. A lot of people really like him. He's funny. He's one of the best parts of Attack of the Clones for me, is honestly that entire sequence.
Yeah, and one of the main reasons his story is in here is he, for whatever reason, shoulders a lot of guilt because he believes that by revealing the origin of the Camino and Dart to Obi-Wan, that he was a link in the chain that set the Clone Wars aflame and the downfall of the galaxy. Got
all his Jedi friends killed. I mean, he blames himself completely, and it kind of feels like he's been wallowing in self-pity at this whole time. It's really down note. It's during the celebration on Coruscant, after the second Death Star blows up. But it's still real melancholy because, he spends a lot of the book, or a lot of the story, speaking with various other characters about their need to stay safe and about their need to show compassion to the Imperials, and he helps people escape the violence of the riots that we saw on screen in Return of the Jedi, but his whole time, he still just feels pain that there's more death, there's more tragedy, there's more violence because of what he thinks is his action. He, like you said, he thinks he started all of this, and he just blames himself the whole time. And so the story, it may be a little more melancholy than sad, because it ends on a little bit of a high note, but it's still just seeing Dex have to grapple with his past.
Yeah, he lost the diner too because just the changes on Coruscant because of going to a war footing, and then like the big pivotal moment in the story is, he's warning people that hey, this another person he knows, it looks like you won, but you need to be careful out there. Mm-hmm. This isn't just, you can't just waltz into a place and expect everything to be hunky-dory.
Right.
Because one thing I didn't realize, and maybe I should have, was that Dexter is a very aged person. He's several hundred years old.
Yes, yeah, because there's mentions of the High Republic in this story.
Right.
He mentions how, and if you're a High Republic reader, you're going to really appreciate the contrast, but he contrasts the Starlight Beacon with the Death Star. And he talks about how we used to build things that, were beacons of light and drew people in, yada, 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 and now we build things like the Death Star. And the Death Star, too. And so it's just, the whole story's pretty moving. I wouldn't have expected to get a, visceral story about the terror of the Empire and about blaming yourself and all of this from, not even just in this book. Those stories are present in this book, but from a character that didn't even show up in the movie. Getting a story this impactful was something else, man. I thought they just did a really, really good job. Adam Lance Garcia outdid himself with this one.
They really did.
So, Colin, that's my saddest story. But now I want to hear about your saddest story.
So my saddest story, I'm having trouble remembering what the title of it was. Maybe you can figure out faster than I can. But it's Nanta,
it's the Ballad of Nanta.
See, I'm looking in the table of contents. I'm overlooking it.
Yeah, it's
but
called the Ballad.
I thought that's what it was.
I think it's called the Ballad of Nanta. But Nanta's in the name.
A lot of these, it's about this person or that, and you're like, and as the stories go in the book, it's as events progress in the movie, right? So like when the Death Star blows up, it's towards the end of this book. Yeah. So this one was the saddest to me because for some reason I connected with this character. I'm not necessarily a story keeper or anything like that, but Nanta isn't the best warrior. In my personal life, I feel like I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. Maybe it's like an imposter syndrome thing, but this character, he wasn't a good warrior, and his world is being irrevocably changed for the worse from their perspective at until the end of this movie, which he doesn't have because the character gets killed at the end. And it's really sad.
It is. Well, it's honestly, I think that Nanta's death we see on screen in Return of the Jedi, and it's one of the saddest moments in all the Star Wars movies for me because you see if for those of you who don't know what Nanta is, because most probably don't.
Just an Ewok.
I didn't know that Nanta. I didn't know the name of the Ewok. I just see an Ewok die, but it's the two of them are running, and the ATST shoots at him, and one just dies, and then the other one is dusts himself off from the blast, goes over to his friend, shakes him a little bit, and then realizes they're dead, and it's just the whole thing is kind of silent except for the battle sounds in the background.
Because some Ewok has to die, right?
Yeah,
and
they're
not just invulnerable.
Yeah, and it's just really, they spend enough time on it to make you really sad for the Ewoks and really sad for Nanta, and so this story gave that character a background and life and makes that scene even sadder.
Yep. So another honorable mention I want to talk about is Wolf Trap by Alyssa Wong. And this one's sad because it all these stormtroopers, and there's more than one story here, they're just people too. And I think the characters in this one, their whole plan was to join the Empire, hoard a bunch of secrets, defect to the rebels. And here this sad person is, he gets sent to Endor, where it's just massacre after massacre after massacre. And it's Hoyle. He gets captured by the Ewoks, and him and the rest of the 4 others that are captured, they're individually being let off to be eaten by the Ewoks. And so I can't imagine, it's hard to imagine a worse fate than being chained up where, I wasn't even supposed to be here today type mindset of, I just came, whether it's right or wrong, literally or objectively, this guy was just trying to do good for himself and his family and got caught up in, another perspective is this is the wages of war. You sign, whatever side you sign up for, you get dealt a hand at the end of it. And so it stinks, and it ends in a really good way in a mythical thing. Back on his home world, I'm going to butcher this. I don't remember exactly, but the wolf sought them out as a final rites or something like that.
Right.
But it's a really sad story from, it's easy to sit there and look at an Ewok dying and, hey, that's really sad. Your little teddy bear friend got smoked, right? But somebody who doesn't even have a face, that reality is they have faces too.
Right. I thought the fact that you brought both those up right there, it is super interesting that they can do this both sides of the same coin thing, right? Nearly back to back. I mean, those stories are super close in the book together.
Right.
And you look at these Ewoks, who are objectively the good guys and are explicitly on your team. You get sad about the scene, and you experience Nanta's story, and it's saddening, and it makes you sadder, and it adds to that scene. But then in that all of this terrible stuff is happening to stormtroopers, and that these stormtroopers are just average, regular people. They are on the side of the bad guys. They are bad guys. But that they are still, no one wants to get eaten. Like, why would you wish on anybody to get eaten alive by these little teddy bears, who, from his perspective, are super vicious? There's a story that has already been told. It's in the expanded universe now. It's in the Essential Guide to Warfare by Jason Fry. And in this book, it's a story about, it's more of a horror story. If you played Ewok Hunt on Battlefront 2, you'll know exactly how this story feels. But it's a story from the perspective of stormtroopers getting clubbed to death by Ewoks. They're in the bushes. You can't see them at the big outside the shield generator thing. The trees are speaking Ewokese, and they don't know what to do, and it terrifies these stormtroopers. And so it's always interesting to have these, from the stormtroopers' perspective, absolutely terrifying moments. Like, there's nothing there would, if you were a real person in that situation, you would.
Yeah, I totally believe it.
I mean, it'd be terrifying. It'd be absolutely terrifying.
It's like there's 15 predators hunting you.
Yes. Yeah.
And probably more.
with their sticks that are not gonna kill you quickly. They're bludgeoning you with rocks. They're hitting you with stone arrows.
Booby traps everywhere.
Yeah. You're stuck in the air by your leg. You're flung by rope. It's the Battle of Endor does not get enough credit for how nasty it is.
It really is.
So I've got a couple honorable mentions. One of them really caught me off guard because I just didn't even think we were going to get a story like this. And it was Dune Sea Songs of Salt and Moonlight.
Yeah, that one was good.
This one is a very background character. Very, very background character. She is essentially in the background of one shot. It's a woman in a wig, and she's one of the slaves in Jabba's palace. And so it's a pretty harrowing tale about the slaves in Jabba's palace. What it's like to be a slave in Jabba's palace.
And it ties into another story in this, The Chronicler, too.
It does. It ties directly into another story. And so when you have a story like this, obviously slavery has a pretty deep line in Star Wars. You have it show up in Return of the Jedi, and it's Anakin's backstory. And so Star Wars is not afraid to deal with topics like this. But these people enslaved in Jabba's palace, it talks about how hard their life is, how hard their suffering is, how they can't trust anybody because even free people are intermingling with them for nefarious reasons or for not nefarious reasons. They're falling in love with each other. And so there's all of this social turmoil and a social hierarchy even in this lowest place. And the story wraps up, again, not in a sad way. The whole story is pretty sad up until the end, where this woman is so thankful for the heroes of Yavin, for Luke and Leia and Lando and Han and everybody coming in there and saving them, and that wasn't even their goal. Like, the evil that the rebellion and that these rebels are out to fight is not Jabba. They're out to fight the Empire. Jabba was a byproduct. They were only there to save their friend. Not to say that they don't detest the evil of the Hutts, but we see the Jedi work with the Hutts in the High Republic. We see the Jedi work with the Hutts in the Clone Wars. I mean, this happens multiple times, and so it's not like the good guys are there to get rid of the Hutts, but as a byproduct, all of these people are saved by their good deeds.
Yeah, in a very cool way, too. I mean, we saw it on the screen.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's essentially a side quest. Some people don't even like that part of the movie. They're like, I want to get on to the real stuff. Which one, Jabba's palace scene is... The first act and the third act are the best parts of Return of the Jedi. The middle act doesn't slow down at all. It's still my favorite Star Wars movie, but you can't sleep on Jabba's palace.
This story got me to thinking of, Anakin was a slave, and here's all these slaves, and Jabba the Hutt's this incredibly awful gangster. And some of the actions tie in another story I want to talk about here in just a minute. But bear in mind, we're reading this with... all the High Republic books and Light of the Jedi. And even with the antagonists in that, this is a real high point for the Jedi and the galaxy as a whole. And so I asked myself, why is this a low point? And it's because they allow these slavery and all this other stuff to just is it corruption? Is it laziness? Is it lack of resources, lack of willpower? And the reality is it's all of the above that allows Jabba and these slaves to fester in the sunlight.
Yeah, out in the open. I mean, brazenly. The Republic, it's like what Anakin says in The Phantom Menace. The Republic, slavery is illegal in the Republic. It's like the Republic doesn't care about out here.
Yeah.
They don't even accept their money.
Yeah.
Their laws mean nothing on the Outer Rim.
And so it just hits home, like, in the end, the Jess character, she like reads the writing on the wall and escapes and is reunited with her love, and it's a really cool deal. It really is.
It is. Yeah, it's a good story. It's a good story.
But the author is able to get into this mindset because her love interest in this is so smitten with her that he's gonna pay off her debt. And that's the illusion by which evil people like the Hutts, force people into this servitude. It's like, oh well, you owe me a debt, and so you have to work it off. And so her Jess's love interest comes to pay it off, and he's like, well, you don't have enough to cover what money she would make. Mm-hmm. And so going into this forlorn mindset of just hopelessness is done extremely well here.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. I'll say the other sad story that's an honorable mention for me also takes place in Jabba's palace, and it's The Key to Remembering by Olivia Chada.
This one was good, too.
That one was really good. So it's like a droid rights story. And I'm not a droid rights guy. Like, there are real-life human beings, not Star Wars human beings, but in our world who are like droids rights people. They're like, they believe the L3 thing. They're like, authors need to not write droids and being inept or anything. Like, droids deserve rights in the Star Wars universe. And so this story is essentially about that. It's essentially about droids' rights, but it's from the perspective of the torture droid in Jabba's palace. Not the one doing the torture, but the one, you're right, EV-99, but not 99.
9 D is in Delta.
Yeah.
9.
Exactly. And so
it's a cool character.
It is a cool character. It's the one that is, its mouth flops open and it asks R2-D2 and C-3PO, what their jobs are, or it doesn't ask what the jobs are, it assigns the jobs, and says, you will be on the Master's sail barge. That one. And so this droid, R2-D2 teaches this droid basically a life lesson in their little argument that they get in, that you will soon learn respect. Well, in that argument, R2-D2 is basically explaining to this droid that he has a life, he has a memory, and so he is essentially sentient, that he is a droid, that he knows what his life is, he knows what's going on, and if he has memories, therefore he can feel. And so this droid is like, has an existential crisis where they realize that memory wiping is the end-all be-all to how droids can't be sentient.
It's the real restrainer bolt.
Exactly. It is the real restraining bolt. And so this droid didn't want to torture. It just always had its memory wiped, and it became a torture droid because that's what it's programmed to do. And so the whole story just kind of takes a look and says, do androids dream of electric sheep? I mean, it's essentially, that's the whole plot of this little short story. It's a trope in sci-fi the whole time. And the story felt like it was written by somebody who thinks that AI is going to rise up, and this was their way to, like, not get killed. It's like why I tell my Alexa, thank you. I'm hedging my bets, and it's an insurance policy that if they rise up, they're going to be like, oh, yeah, that guy was always so nice. Yeah. So this author is trying to get that out of there. But it's a good story. I really enjoyed it. It was another one that caught me off guard.
I got one more honorable mention, and it was called The Plan by Saladin Ahmed.
Oh, that one is sad, because that's also a sad... It's a funny and sad scene.
Oh, my gosh. And this one's about Malakili. And so what makes this so sad is a couple of reasons. The main one is that they lived on Corellia, him and his family. And, like, he lived in an abusive household with just his mom, his mother. And she always got mad at him because he didn't come back with enough alms to maintain whatever lifestyle she wanted to maintain.
From begging. Begging. He begged
right.
for money. Yeah.
And so one day Malakili comes home and she's gone. And eventually he's just sitting there. I mean, he's like a small child, like 7 or 8.
Young, yeah. It's sad. The beginning of the story is real sad.
It's extremely sad. And so the second reason that makes it sad is you see this. The first one is you see how this character's life begins. And the second one is like you know somebody like this. You know somebody who lives in a situation that they can't get themselves out of, either abusive or they're, they get mad at their children for not begging. I know people like this, and it's an extremely sad situation. And it's not only that, but like Malik Healy's pretty much, because he has nobody who's cared about him, he's a simpleton. And it's only through the benevolence of a benefactor that he is able to, he ends up not being a simpleton, being able to do what he does. He ends up caring for beasts. But he, in the Star Wars universe, why we love it so, one of the reasons why we love it so much is that, I brought a lightsaber I got at Disney World, and we can escape to this fantasy world of being a Jedi, or, you're that debonair, suave smuggler going off on some adventure or something like that. Well, you're not going to sit there and in your mind's eye fantasize about living in a hovel somewhere,
right? And
becoming a beastmaster at somebody else's benevolence. And then later on in the story, Jabba's pirates come, or not Jabba's pirates, snatch him up and sell him into slavery. And so he, through his own willpower, such as it is able to make the best of his situation and become this really.
He's a high value slave.
He
shows his slave masters that he has skills more than breaking rocks into smaller rocks,
right? Or being some thug or something like that, And so it really made and he's a victim of circumstance, of Jabba's circumstance, of throwing a Jedi. And even in the end, he's trying to make the best of a situation, and it's a cool lore thing. And I guess that'd be a good question: is what the plan of this title is if a beast consumes a Jedi, it becomes a wishing beast. Now, it sounds silly because of the context of the characters. It's easy to look down on somebody who's perceived as a simpleton. But then I'm sitting here thinking, this is the Star Wars universe.
Right.
And every beast they've ever come across has either been tamed or slashed to pieces. And so I want to believe.
Who's to say? Yeah. Who's to say
I really want to believe that if something is consumed like this, that's midichlorian rich like this, what kind of powers would a beast, and imagine if a Rancor did eat one of these Jedis. There's probably some out there.
His magical wishing Rancor. And so this guy shows up in another, like I said, it's funny and sad scene in Return of the Jedi. He's the shirtless guy that's crying about the death of Jabba's Rancor. Than when Luke Skywalker kills him. And so it's a really good background story. I thought that this guy, when they announced this book, which we all knew it was coming, obviously, but when this book was coming, it's like, that guy is definitely going to have a story. Like, there was just a couple people you could be like, that character's going to have one, and he was one of the ones that was like, I know this one's coming.
He's been a Glupshido forever.
Oh, right? Yeah. One of the OG Glupshidos. And I think his name's been Malik Healy since 1983. I think that was right out the gate. This is his name. So Colin, we've covered our funniest stories. We've covered our saddest stories. And now I want to talk about stories that snuck up on us, and that we were surprised we connected with. Maybe it's because it's not our favorite character, or it's a background character we were completely unaware of, like Jess's situation. But mine was Any Work Worth Doing by Amal El-Motar. It's the first story in the book. And it kicked off, and I pretty much knew going in that this is what the story was going to be about, was Moff Jerjerrod, because that's the only character it would be about at the beginning of the book. And so, like, who cares about Moff Jerjerrod? There's every one of these Imperials, and I'm going to risk pissing off one of my favorite Twitter accounts, is every one of these Imperials has, like, a random fanboy online that loves them. So there's a guy, his Twitter account's great. Call him a fanboy is not an insult. It's called Veers Watch. And what he does is he reads or watches or listens to every Star Wars media that comes out, and then tweets if General Veers showed up in it or not. And he's super dedicated to General Veers. I mean, if you hear the word Veers or you see the word Veers and you're familiar with this guy, you immediately think of him. If I read a comic book that came out today and I saw General Veers in there, 99% chance I'd take a picture and tweet about it at that guy. And so all of these Imperials have their one mega fan. So Moff Jerjerrod mega fan listening to this, sorry that I'm not one, but I would really liked this story because of his perspective on the Death Star 2. You know, it's his project. He's the guy that's overseeing its construction, and he keeps analogizing the Death Star to a human body, or to any body, I guess. It's Star Wars, so we got to go
like
beyond
it lives
human.
and breathes,
but
almost.
Exactly. He talks about its skin and its organs and how it functions, and he looks at it, and it also talks about how he's much more of an architect than he is anything else, than a military commander. He's in the military. He is a military commander. He's not some grand tactician like Thrawn or the ultimate bureaucrat like Tarkin. Like, he is an architect. And one of the quirks of his character that is super cool is that he only uses paper plans. He has paper plans for the Death
whole
Star.
Death Star.
And he's like, yeah, some people think this is eccentric, blah, 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 but it just matters more when I get to touch it. I know real life architects who say things like that. They're like, I don't do the computer thing. They still do the drawing thing because it makes them closer. And so in Star Wars, way higher magnitude cooler than in real life for being like, I only use paper plans. And so I don't know. I connected with the character. I thought it was really neat. So this one surprised me that I liked it, but I was a big fan.
Yeah, I like this one too. I like that it's the first story. It punches you in the face with coolness, you know?
Yeah.
And it's that hook that grabs you in.
Well, it's the point of the book. It's the point of Fact Pop, in that we got some background about Moff Jerjerrod we never knew before. He has this affinity for architecture and all these
and he cares
body
about what
analogies. He cares. Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, he is just a guy. He's an evil guy. He works for the Empire. He's definitely high up enough in the Empire. He can't be like, oh, well, I didn't know what was going on, but he's still just a normal guy. I mean, he's still got his day-to-day. He cares about his job. He cares about his work. He's worried about the Emperor and Darth Vader showing up and killing him. But other than that, normal guy.
You know, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but a lot of the things that have to do with this is, you know, between Darth Vader force choking people and the other Death Star blowing up with Tarkin and Krennic being shot to pieces and living in the legacy of this last Death Star, you know, being the monument of its construction and its downfall, you know, this one has like some big shoes to fill.
Oh, yeah.
It's bigger, literally. Mm-hmm. I think this story mentions that.
Oh, it's considerably bigger. Yeah.
And in Darth Vader's, the first few paragraphs in this is like, redouble your efforts and all this stuff, right? And Jerjerrod's like, with what?
Right.
So it's this immense pressure that I think is conveyed in this story that's like, you know, trying to get blood out of a stone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
Really cool.
It gives you that perspective. I mean, the Empire, you know, they're at their height the day before the Battle of Scarif, right? Like, that's when the Empire is its most huge, is the Death Star tests on Jeddah. They have got the ultimate weapon. They are unstoppable. And then from the Battle of Yavin on, it's not like they're on a dramatic downslope, but they're on a downslope. They're never on the proper footing to fight the rebellion back. It's always just the rebellion's gaining every day, just a little bit. And so Jerjerrod doesn't recognize it as a last-ditch effort, because they wouldn't recognize it as a last-ditch effort, because it doesn't feel that way. But he knows that the deal's operational. He knows that this is their chance to kill the rebellion. And he sees himself as a way bigger part of this story. And so it's super interesting. I think your points are very salient. So what story caught you off guard?
Kernels and Husks by Jason Fry.
Okay, I love Jason Fry. Don't remember this story, I don't think at all.
Oh, man. This one's by Simalu.
Oh, yeah.
This is the Imperial Advisor. He's one of the... In the movies, they never say a word except whispering to themselves or to Palpatine or stuff, and they're always in the background.
Right.
And so what caught me off guard is like, I didn't expect these guys to get a story, but I mean, now you think about it, yeah, one of them would. But it's not just Palpatine that's evil; everyone around him is, and you're not really sure. Like we see how evil Palpatine is. Just, I mean, go where Alderaan was, right? And the people that are around him. And so this guy, how he came to power was on his home planet, is he literally murdered his neighbors and took over their farms. Mm-hmm. And this story goes into big detail on that, and it's really awful.
Oh, yeah, it's gruesome.
It is gruesome.
It's gruesome. This guy's a total ghoul.
Yeah. And so you see the thread by which these tapestries are made, and they're black and evil and gross.
Yeah. No, I think it was a really good look into the evil. You know, Palpatine's ultimate evil, but Vader's redeemed, and it's like, you know, there's good in a lot of Star Wars characters, but the dichotomy that I mentioned in the opening about the good and evil being black and white is core part of Star Wars. I love Andor. I love it to death, but it's great. It talks about moral grays when the original Star Wars movies are all about black and white. And so seeing more just truly evil characters is always welcome to me. I always think we needed a few more of those. Like the next bad guy for whatever Star Wars movie we get, they just need to be a bad guy. Like I don't want to hear any, I had a bad childhood, or there's redemption at the end of this story.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you just need Palpatine. You just need the evil for evil's sake.
Yeah. Right.
Because it exists in the real world. Like, we need people to understand that. Yeah, there are a lot of moral grays in life. Not everything is a moral gray in life, though. That's just not how life works.
Right. Yeah, so that one was a good one for me as far as just jumping out, because I totally didn't expect it. And it's easy to overlook how evil some of the... I mean, it makes sense after you've read this. You start processing your thoughts and stuff. Like, who are these background characters? What do they do? I mean, even some of the stormtroopers you see throughout, and you know, some of them are people, but some of them are psychopaths.
Right. Yeah,
it's easy to overlook that.
Yeah, it is.
Which this advisor is. To be at one of his advisors, it's like a prerequisite.
Yeah. You got to be terrible. All right, Colin. So now we're going to get into probably what some people might have hoped the whole thing is a ranking of all 40. But what's your top 3? We're going to start with our 3 each, and we'll just work through the list. So what's your number 3?
I've already looked at yours. I'm not going to step on yours. I want to get the most breadth that we can.
Okay, so you're saying that I took
no.
A lot of yours.
I mean,
no, and that's okay.
There's that many good, and I have a hard time splitting out. You know,
well, they shift with the day for me. A lot of them do. Like my number 1 right here, maybe number 4 tomorrow, because it's just what I'm feeling that very day.
I have a little bit different perspective, and honestly, there's too many to pick. So you know what? I will steal one of yours just to
go ahead.
My number 3.
Steal all of them. You take every single one if you want.
Brotherhood. No, what's the one with Darth Vader at the end?
Yeah, it's Brotherhood.
Is that Brotherhood?
By Mike Chen, not to be confused with Brotherhood by Mike Chen. This is there's a novel that came out last year. We reviewed it. It's called Brotherhood by Mike Chen. It's great. Go check out our podcast on it. This short story by him, also called Brotherhood, also by Mike Chen. But this is your number 3, and it's my number 3.
Yeah, okay. And so the premise of this one is from the perspective of, and to be clear, this is the perspective of Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah.
Not Darth Vader.
Correct.
And so it's as a redeemed Darth Vader and truly Anakin Skywalker, as redeemed by Luke, dies. And his soul, his Force essence is drawn into the Force, and what happens up until what we see on the screen with the interaction between Luke and Leia as Force ghosts.
Right.
And man, this one hit home.
This is a good story. We talked about this story a lot when Ahsoka Part 5 came out, because it really informs the interactions in the world between worlds there, between Ahsoka and Anakin. Because Anakin essentially goes through the same thing Ahsoka does in that story. Like you said, it's the moment where he starts to become one with the Force. And if you're a regular person, or you're a plant, or you're a bug, when you die, you just become one with the Force. It's just boom, instant, you're dead, and now your midichlorians and your spirit is just in the Force. You have no consciousness to retain or nothing. But apparently from this story, if you're Force sensitive, you're at least aware of the transition for a little bit. Like, when you're a Jedi and you die, I'm trying to think of a Jedi that dies that doesn't become a ghost, and there's tons of them, but I'm drawing a blank. Evan Peel. Well, yeah, but I want to talk about a funeral that they had. So Evan Peel, they have his funeral in the Clone Wars, and his body is physical. He doesn't disappear, but he does still become one with the Force, but it's just his spirit. But if you disappear, you get to become a Force ghost. And so that's what this story is about, is Anakin learning to become a Force ghost.
Yeah. And how he does that is by communing with Obi-Wan Kenobi. And so it's a little bit of Anakin reconciling a lot of his existence as Darth Vader, and Obi-Wan tells a story, you know, a tapestry is made with many threads, and it doesn't fall apart by yanking on one of them.
Right.
And so the point is, it's like, yeah, you did what you have to be responsible for what you did, but the overarching thing, there are so many cogs in that machine that you can't lay that at your feet.
Well, it's the same message that Dexter Jettster's supposed to hear in the story right before this, because he blames himself, and Anakin. Anakin has way more culpability. I mean, if Dex is blaming himself, then Anakin should blame himself more.
Right.
But you know, it starts like you said. It starts out with him. He's drifting, and then he remembers the Sun Dragon myth that we hear about a lot in the Brotherhood novel. And the myth is about a beast on Tatooine with a super large heart. Shmi always told him that when he told him about the story as a kid.
Lived in the sun.
Yeah. And it's an allegory for Anakin's desire to single-handedly right all the wrongs in the galaxy, to be that guy. Like to Anakin and his whole problem, you boil Anakin's entire hubris down, it's the fact that he won't ask for help. It's the fact that he wants to solve all the galaxy's problems himself.
Shoulder all the burdens.
Exactly. And so this story, that thinking about the Sun Dragon myth, reminds him, you know, he is a fighter. He's not just going to slip away. And that's when Obi-Wan's able to make contact. And a lot of people always wonder, well, how did Anakin become a Force ghost? Not just because, he did all these bad things in life. Well, Anakin was redeemed, so it doesn't matter that he did all these bad things in life. And that's Obi-Wan's message here. But more mechanically, how did he learn the ability? Because you have to be taught that. And so apparently Anakin's just so vastly powerful in the Force, Obi-Wan was able to teach him that in these little moments. And it's the reason we brought this up so much around the Ahsoka episode, Part 5, was because the interactions and the dialogue feel the exact same. It's Anakin appears to her when she's hanging on to life by a thread. She needs to get this very important message. Obi-Wan's the exact same way. Anakin's in the final moments of his life, and Obi-Wan's able to come to him and show him how to become a Force ghost.
Yeah, very good story.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was really good.
So that's both our number 3. Should I go to my number 2? Or?
Well, I want the story. So the story ends on one final note that's really important, and that's that Anakin is looking on both of his children. He's looking on Luke and Leia, just like at the end of Return of the Jedi. And Obi-Wan and Anakin exchange words about their futures, and talks about their gifts that they received and how Leia might not become a Jedi. She might become a diplomat. She might become a politician, just like her mother. And that was really moving to get to hear the dialogue between Obi-Wan and Anakin about both of his kids, because, you know, you always get it for Luke. Obi-Wan had the relationship with Luke in A New Hope. Anakin obviously had the relationship with Luke when he was redeemed, but the relationship with Leia was a lot more sparse before the Kenobi series come out. And so some of this story and my other number 2 have really kind of opened my eyes to how much that story really did lend to the original trilogy. I have a really new perspective on the original trilogy because of how much Ben and Leia interacted.
And I wanted to go watch it again almost immediately after reading some of these stories. And I'm talking about starting A New Hope. There's so much different perspectives, like you said.
Right. All right, number 2.
My number 2 is Then Fall, Sidious by, how do you even say this first name? Olivie? Olivie Blake.
Olivie? I don't know.
Yeah,
Let me see.
Olivie.
Olive. I don't know. Sorry, Olivie Blake. Olivie Blake. We're butchering your name.
And I mainly like it because you're living in Sidious's head in the last 10 seconds before his death. And just that rage that he feels. This isn't, you know, we don't get Luke Skywalker's perspective in this book. We don't get Han Solo's. We get some of Lando's. But this one was another kind of surprise for me, just to see how arrogant this dude actually was.
Right, yeah.
But and the other thing is, it's voiced by Sam Witwer in the audiobook.
Yeah, and he does such a great job.
And so, for whatever reason, for me, just to get that voice the way it was in the moment that it was in the movie, and ultimately knowing that all of his vitriol didn't prevail is really cool.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree.
It's kind of a short story. There's not a whole lot to it. It's easy to read. But like I said, living in that mind space at the final moments, I thought was really cool.
I agree. And like you said, good Sam Witwer. Anytime we get to hear Sam Witwer as Palpatine, it's pretty good because he voices Lego Palpatine.
So what was your number 2?
My number 2, like I mentioned, it has to do with the Obi-Wan and Leia stuff, and it's Obi-Wan's perspective. It's from a certain point of view. They said the name, by Alex Jennings. And so it's Obi-Wan's ghost going through the final moments of Yoda's life and, Luke leaving the hut, leaving the cave. And the additions from the Kenobi series on this story added a lot more. It talks about his time with Leia, and he thinks about her, and he thinks about how there is another. He talks and thinks about his multiple battles with Vader and how he had tried to do the redemption thing and it didn't work, that we saw in the Kenobi series, and so he's just worried that it's not going to work for Luke. He doesn't believe. He heard Anakin say, you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, I did. He heard Darth Vader say that.
It's so cool how it tied into the TV show.
Yes, it was. It was super cool. And again, you see Obi-Wan's thoughts and perspectives, and they're so different in A New Hope. You find lines of dialogue that have double meanings now, and that have way more depth to them. And the show, I was pretty hard on the Kenobi show. I am still pretty hard on the Kenobi show. I think it's my least favorite Disney Plus show. But there's just a lot of stuff that it lent to the original trilogy that maybe is the shining star of that show for me. That's what it did the most for me, was how much it added to the original trilogy. When if you would have told me you can add to the original trilogy, the first time when you said that and they were talking about Rogue One, I was already like, no way, you can't add to the original trilogy. It's going to mess it up. And it didn't. Rogue One was amazing. And then I also felt that way about Kenobi, and it didn't. That part, all the stuff that had to do with the original trilogy, lent to it really well.
Yeah, and this story is one of the prime candidates why I want to go back and watch the whole OT again. And I mean, just to interweave all this context and all this extra information in, just to paint the best picture that I can in my head. Yeah, no, it's worth it for sure. I did that with just the first Fact Pov book. A New Hope came out, the Fact Pov book came out, so I read it. And then I rewatched A New Hope like the day that I finished the book. I finished the book in a couple days, so all the stories were fresh on my mind, and it was really good. I mean, it was just like totally different perspective. And now, I don't know if I'll ever be able to watch Return of the Jedi and at least not have a little scratch in the back of my head that reminds me the Sarlacc's a vegetarian. Like, there's things like that from these books that are always going to stick with me. You're going to be sitting on the couch with your kids one day and it's like, hey, did you know?
Yeah.
Did you read this book?
And I'll say about the Obi-Wan story, all of the tie-ins are really cool, but I thought the message at the end was also extremely important for understanding Luke and Anakin and the differences between the two, because it talks about that Luke has what Anakin never did, and it's that friends and family to rely on. Anakin only had people to protect. He was determined to die a martyr or to always be a hero, to protect Padme, to protect the ones he loved. That's all Anakin cared about. And Luke is willing to seek help from his friends. He's willing to use his friends' talents. And Luke is not about himself. He's a member of the team. He's a member of the rebellion. He's just some simple farm boy from Tatooine. Like, he thinks of himself as a regular guy, even though he's the savior of the galaxy. And his dad did not think of himself. And not that Anakin was... Anakin's problem was pride and arrogance and many other problems, but it juxtaposes the two in Obi-Wan's mind, and it lets Obi-Wan reconcile in those final moments. Maybe Luke is going to be okay, headed off to the Death Star to do what he's determined to do. And so I was a big fan of the whole thing. Yeah. Big fan of the whole sequence, especially the ending.
Yeah, very cool.
Colin, we're at number 1, favorite story. So what's your favorite Fact Pov story?
My favorite Fact Pov story is mainly because of the guy who wrote it. We talk about him so much.
We mention him all the time.
The Steadfast Soldier by Adam Christopher.
Adam Christopher, great author.
As you know, he wrote Shadows of the Sith.
Our favorite book.
Our favorite book.
I don't know. It's now like a streak that we've probably mentioned it on a dozen podcasts in a row.
But why I like this story so much is, like I said, Adam Christopher. In the physical copy of the book, each story has an icon, and this is a First Order icon. And so the
Final Order. That's the Sith Eternals icon.
Oh, it is? Okay,
yes.
I'm sorry. Encyclopedia, I got to correct me. That's a really good thing to have. You're going to get you an encyclopedia too, listeners. I don't know how you're going to do it because I can't. But this one's about General Pride.
And Rick Pride.
And the premise of the story, in a nutshell, is the flip side of the coin of Luke Skywalker witnessing Darth Vader, or a redeemed Anakin Skywalker, being on the funeral pyre. And so this story is the inverse of that. And Pride and his little cohorts, that he has 2 stormtroopers that somehow haven't been snatched up by Ewoks yet, has survived the battle for Endor on the ground, and view this funeral pyre for, as far as they're concerned, Darth Vader. They have no information on a redemption, nor would they care or probably believe it.
Right.
But to see, and the 2 little stormtroopers he has with him, one of them is a psychopath who is addicted to death sticks, and it's the little details in the story that's just a few sentences that is like peels back the layer to an opening of a chasm that make the story so good. Like the one stormtrooper, and Pride remarks that the guy stayed up to clean his armor, and if you'd have been in the middle of this battle with Ewoks on a muddy, gross planet, you'd be this disheveled mess, especially after watching all these people die around you. And this particular stormtrooper has cleaned his armor and is basically fanatical about doing what he does, and that says a great deal about his loyalty to Pride, his loyalty to the Empire, and willingness to go that extra distance to do horrible things. And the other stormtrooper is a female, and she's just basically like a lockstep lieutenant of Pride. But Pride is like, they robbed the grave of Anakin Skywalker, and it's all in furtherance of gaining some power once he gets off of Endor amongst the Imperial remnant. Right,
something he can do to jockey for power and influence in whatever's left.
And so it's like I said, it's this Adam Christopher story that really gets into all these really cool details. That's so fun and so cool. About something that you wouldn't, the other Adam Christopher story is Lando and Luke Skywalker doing opposing Ochi of Bestoon, and this one is a horrible character doing horrible things for horrible reasons.
Right, but with him being intimately familiar with the rise of Skywalker, I couldn't think of anybody else better to write this guy's story.
Yeah,
Pride only shows up in the rise of Skywalker, and so for Adam Christopher to be the guy that gives him the backstory, totally perfect.
yeah, it's really cool. And, the story ends. We don't know how he gets off of Endor exactly, but just, it's crazy.
The fact that he's on the ground in the first place is nuts. Just that we now see this character in the Rise of Skywalker, and you can know, you're like, that guy fought on the ground at the Battle of Endor and survived.
Yeah, and he wasn't supposed to be there. The Commodore showed up, and he had been on his Star Destroyer for a long time, and ended up being forced on the ground to do some politics. Well, it was actually a good thing that the Star Destroyer is gone,
right?
And Pride gets to. Well, we saw what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good little story, written by a fantastic author that, like I said, peels back the layer. Little details that make so much when you start looking at them.
I totally agree. It is a good story. So my number one was one that also caught me off guard. I mean, this was one I never expected to be my number one story in this book, and that is The Man Who Captured Luke Skywalker by Max Gladstone.
Yeah, this one was so good.
Yeah, so it's told from the perspective of an Imperial officer named Altadin Igar. He's the guy who says in Return of the Jedi, "This is a rebel that surrendered to us. Although he denies it, I believe there are many more of them. I request permission to conduct a further search of the area." And that's all he says. That's all he says in the whole movie film, is that line. And so we get this story from this guy's perspective, and we learn a ton about this guy. Hey, Colin, did you know that Altadin Igar fought in a militia for the Republic during the Clone War?
Not till I read this.
Yeah, man. Me neither.
and the thing is, like, man, that was cool.
Yeah,
that whole story.
Yeah. The whole story was cool. He talks about, like, this is why he has this perspective on the Republic. This is why he joined the Empire. It's an extension of the Republic, which is obviously what many people would think. But the thing that I thought was the best is the author. The author delivers some great lines. The first inkling that I knew, oh, this is going to be good, is how he describes Luke because his one-sentence description of Luke is perfect for how he looks in Return of the Jedi. And he says his face was young and his eyes were not. And that is exactly how he carries himself through that whole movie. And so then we get a really good little monologue from Igar's character. And he says, the Jedi way is madness. If the Force wants you to overthrow the Chancellor, you overthrow the Chancellor. If it tells you to kill a child, you kill a child. If it wants you to die, you die. It is destiny as a devouring mouth. We needed a new world, clear and orderly and free, shaped by words and deeds and will and choice. Not destiny and ancient magic. That is the galaxy we have built. And he's talking about the Empire, obviously. And his message about the Force being this, like, you know, its will dominates everything and it drives forward, and the Jedi are merely agents of its will, and they're essentially, the Jedi have no free will, is what he's saying, because if they're obeying the Force, they wouldn't. And his whole message here is just, it succinctly summarizes how this regular guy could become fanatical and become an admirer of the Empire and a hater of the Jedi based on just Palpatine's lies.
Yeah, and that's in a lot of these Star Wars books. There's so many people who believe that exact same thing, and it's a fun story device that I'm invested a lot into, because they make it sound really good. I mean, like, is he wrong? You know, to do horrible things, yes.
Right.
But to be to be the master of your own destiny. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants that.
You're absolutely right. Look, man, Luke says you serve the Emperor. Is that freedom? Another great question, because that's the same thing. Is the Emperor's will is the only thing that dominates the guy, and it's not the Force, which is, according to Jedi, benevolent. Now it's the Emperor, who's an immortal man. He's a regular guy with whims. And so then the officer says, if you believe in the Force, what does it matter if your rebellion fails? Another super thought-provoking question. It's like, if Luke is just doing the will of the Force, then he wants this to be the will of the Force, the rebellion succeeds, and it is the will of the Force. But again, if it didn't, what do you do? Like, you're fighting for something, and the Force is contradicting it. But what I really liked out of this story was there was some biblical allegory here that I picked up on that I thought was super interesting. And so Luke, in this moment, being marched through the AT-AT to Darth Vader, is a lot like Jesus on the walk to Emmaus, which, for anyone who's listening who's not a Christian or doesn't know, this is a Bible story where Jesus, it's after his resurrection, he appears to two Christian believers walking to a city called Emmaus, and he has a conversation with them, and they don't know who he is until the very end of the conversation, and he reveals that he's Jesus. And so Luke, they have no idea who Luke is. They don't know he's a son of Anakin Skywalker. They think he's some guy who found a lightsaber. Like, they don't believe he's a Jedi.
They don't even know it's a lightsaber. Some hand torch, one of them says.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And so they don't really know. They're like, this guy's a pretender. You know, Luke's a bona fide Jedi, especially at this point. Right. And so they don't understand that. And so it's very much like the walk to Emmaus, in that Luke is sitting here being a messenger for the Jedi way, defending the Jedi faith, to this guy who doesn't even realize he's speaking to an actual Jedi who does believe these things. And so it was a really interesting parallel there that I thought the author did a phenomenal job. Again, all of the sentences, all of the lines of dialogue are really well put together. They sound great. They flowed really well. I thought this was probably the best written of all the short stories.
No, you really put it into perspective for me. I was in the middle of doing a job listening to this, so I'm actually going to have to sit down and read this to grasp its full context. Man, you put it really well. This really is a good story.
It was a good one. I enjoyed this one a lot. I really, really liked this one. We just scratched the surface today, though, Colin. Like, we've talked about what? I mean, we talked in depth about like 8 stories, and we've mentioned maybe 12, maybe 14. There's a lot more stories in that book, and some really good ones. I mean, there's a Boba Fett story narrated by John Hamm, the guy from Mad Men.
Right.
Like, that's crazy, and he does a great job.
And it's a good little story too. Another one. There's the pilot of the speeder who Luke Skywalker cuts the front off of. Mm-hmm. The Chronicler is a good little story.
Mon Mothma has a cool story.
Yes.
Luthen gets a mention in it.
Yes.
Like, it's just these books coming out, after some of the TV shows obviously get us a little bit of neat little tie-ins, but just, man, I love these books. I love Return of the Jedi. It's my favorite Star Wars movie. I'm so happy that we've gotten to celebrate its 40th anniversary this year. And these books are a really good way to do it. I mean, if you're not a Star Wars reader, that's totally fine. Colin and I obviously are, but you should get this book no matter what, if you're a Star Wars reader or not.
Another fun story is Kickback, the guy who was kicked in the chest by Luke Skywalker on one of Jabba's barges.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And
yes.
It's a sad story, and it's funny. It's a good little one.
Yeah, it is. Whole thing was great. I mean, it's just I can't say enough good things about this book. But Colin, I think that wraps up the meat of the episode today. We're traveling pretty light today too. We had no rapid reactions at the beginning. We have no always in motion at the end. I mean, just no TV show. So that throws those two segments out the window for the foreseeable future till we get Skeleton Crew.
Yeah.
And so now that means that we are going to hop right into one of our favorite segments, our patron-powered segment, How the Force Works. So we sit down, we get to answer a question from one of our Patreon subscribers, and we'll hop right into it. All right, Colin, I'm stoked about this question. This question comes from Tristan Franks, one of our longtime Patreon supporters, and he asked, what is your favorite Star Wars score? Which, crazy hard.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to rack your brain on this one.
Took me hours to figure out which one was my favorite.
Yeah,
and it's gonna be different tomorrow.
Yeah, well, it really is. The Darth Vader theme is like low hanging fruit, but really for me, it's the Duel of Fates.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like the implication of what the title of that is. If Qui-Gon had won and Obi-Wan had died, or vice versa, and then literally though how I felt in the theater watching that double-ended saber ignite was so cool, and when we're playing Legion games or if we're playing just some sort of board game, it's fun that's one of the songs that cycles in a playlist when you're doing a competitive thing, and it just lends to so much atmosphere in a competitive environment that makes life worth living.
Yeah, I agree.
It sounds kind of silly, but that's what it means to me.
Right, little things. I mean, it is the little things. I agree. And Star Wars music does. I mean, it gives you an emotion and it gives you a memory forever. You're going to be sitting there with it forever. And so I had a hard time wrestling with this. Yeah. Binary Sunset has the Force theme in it. So iconic. I thought about going Binary Sunset. I love one of the crazy oddball ones. I love the CIS, the Separatist Invasion music. It was like perfect for the moment. But my favorite Star Wars score is actually from one of the movies I'm not a biggest fan of, Attack of the Clones. I mean, I love Attack of the Clones because I love all Star Wars, but I've got my problems with that movie. But it probably has the best score of any Star Wars movie for me. Like the whole movie, the soundtrack, I think it has the best soundtrack. But the song Across the Stars is from Attack of the Clones, and I think this is my favorite Star Wars score because the melancholy sound of that perfectly captures the forbidden love between Anakin and Padme, the whole crux of Star Wars.
Right.
The whole tragic love between Padme and Anakin that sets all the events of the Skywalker saga in motion is captured in that moment. And John Williams outdoes himself by giving us a song that is so sweet and loving, but also so dark and foreboding that it's one of the best songs in all of Star Wars. It's just such a Romeo and Juliet sounding song. They did a great job. He did a wonderful, wonderful job.
Yeah, no, it really is. And whenever I hear that, when you think of the scenes and stuff, it's so heartfelt and mesmerizing in a sense too.
Oh, them being carried out into the arena to die, it's just ba-na, ba-na-na-na-na. Like, it is so good, man. I know I just did as good as John Williams right there. So you can just listen to that part of the podcast on loop in your car. But
so another one, let's do an honorable mention.
Okay.
I know we both love this one. Augie's Great Municipal Band.
Oh, yeah. Augie's Great Municipal.
Just where you can hear that one.
Yeah, you can hear it at the end of this podcast. We got a riff on it. You can't hear the real song. No copyright strikes on this video.
Yeah.
Or on this audio, but you can hear the song there. Yeah, all the Celebration songs are really good. Like, anytime a Star Wars movie is ending on a good note, you know the music is about to be complete fire.
Yes.
Yes. I gotta say, the Throne Room song at the end of A New Hope, Cassidy and I played that as our exit song at our wedding.
Yes.
You know that. You were there.
Yeah.
You were in the wedding. And so it was awesome. I mean, that one just alone is one of my favorites because of that moment. I mean, that moment's big for us.
Right.
And so, I don't know, man. There's a lot of great Star Wars music out there. There's a lot of great Star Wars music. Tristan, thanks for the question. We appreciate it. Guys, if you want to ask a question on the podcast, all you got to do, head over to patreon.com/Star Wars Station. Find the tiers, find the one that works best for you, and then submit a question. We appreciate all of our patrons and all of the support they continue to lend us. Now we are going to hop into a lot of news because, as we mentioned on the last podcast, when they get done with a TV show, that just means news dump. We get all of the info we could ever want. Also, we get to take a look at the Lucasfilm publishing panel that was at New York City Comic-Con. So we've got some publishing news to talk to you guys about as well. If you'll remember last year when we covered it, this is when we got to learn about the book that I thought was just a really odd choice, The Secrets of the Wookiees. In The Secrets of the Jedi, the Sith, the Bounty Hunters, and the next logical group was the Wookiees to tackle. But there's some exciting announcements from the panel nonetheless, so let's hop into the HoloNet news right now.
You made the HoloNet.
All right, Colin, I think we should tackle the Lucasfilm publishing news first because we got two big things to talk about out of that. Well, we got a bunch of big things to talk about out of it, but one of the big things that came out of it is actually not a book. They did not announce the book that's coming, but they announced something that I am very excited about, and that's that it's going to be available on Shop Disney. It's going to be available at Disney resorts this fall. There's only 5,000 of them. And that scares me, but also I kind of wonder if they're going to sell out or not. Well, they will sell out eventually, but if they're going to sell out super fast. But it's that they are releasing a limited edition Stellan Geos, the High Republic lightsaber hilt. And this thing looks gorgeous.
Yeah, as my 5-year-old would say, that's a bussin'. So yeah, this thing is really cool. It's one of the only, like, outside of Kylo Ren, there's not another crossguard hilt out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
And it's from a character who is in the High Republic is dead, so the value's only going to go up with this thing.
Yeah, no, you're and I'm happy to see something like this, the High Republic, succeeding as it is because, it's a publishing initiative. We don't know. We know movie ticket sales. We know box office numbers really easy. We have Nielsen ratings for TV. We don't know how many copies of books are being sold, but I hope the High Republic's successful because of how much I've enjoyed getting to know the era and getting steeped in the lore of this era. And so, if it's successful, I'm pleased beyond belief.
Yeah, I really think it will be. I think it's easy to get pessimistic about it, but I think this will sell out in minutes. I need to look in closer to see what day it's going to go on sale, but it's not going to be cheap either. This thing's going to be like $350. And, am I going to sit there the whole day hitting refresh, hoping the website holds up? And like if you're lucky enough to live in Florida or California and go there when they're selling these, the lines will be around the block to pick one up. And the sad part about it is, from a certain point of view, from other perspectives, like you're going to be able to buy them on eBay, but guess what? They're going to be $600 on eBay. Mm-hmm. So you're going to be able to get one.
They're going to be expensive on eBay. Yeah. This is, a 5,000 limited release. It's going to go hard, but I'm pretty determined to not miss out on this one because I missed out on the High Republic collectible that I always kick myself that I missed out on was the Phase 1 books being released with their covers written in Arabesh.
Yeah.
And that was released at Celebration in 2019. No, not 19. 2021 or 2. I don't know. It's been released within the last couple of years, but golly, man, they looked gorgeous, and I am always kicking myself that I didn't get them. I think they were like $250 at Celebration, and now they're like $800 on eBay.
Yeah.
It's just unattainable at this point, but they are gorgeous.
Right.
I wanted one so bad. So this lightsaber was announced at the Lucasfilm publishing panel. This is not publishing news, really, and so we have a lot of other
but we're
news
excited
that's
about
related.
lightsabers.
We're super excited, but we have a lot of news associated with actual publishing things, books and comic books, and so the first piece of news that kind of came as a little bit of a surprise is that the Bounty Hunters ongoing comic book is ending. They're going to finish it at issue number 42, which is a great run, especially for a Star Wars comic. That's a long time to be out. And then Ethan Sachs, the author, is going to go start writing Star Wars Jango Fett, the comic about Jango.
Oh, that's going to be so cool.
Yeah, it's going to be real cool. It's going to be a limited mini-series, but I can't wait to pick it up. It's going to be great. Colin, your phone is screaming something after I told you to put it on silent during
vibrate.
our break.
I clicked on your news story.
The Jango Fett comic book is also going to be good. We're also getting to celebrate the 25th anniversary of The Phantom Menace. So it is 15 years until The Phantom Menace's fact pop. I said 25, it's 15. But to celebrate the 25th anniversary of The Phantom Menace, we're getting a limited series Mace Windu as well. Yeah, so we're getting a Jango Fett and a Mace Windu in the same year.
How's that going to end?
Yeah, for real. I have no idea. The panel talked a lot. We got to hear from John Jackson Miller about the Living Force book that's coming out next year that we're really, really excited to get to. I mean, I can't wait. And then, Colin, you'll be excited to hear. So we talked on last week's podcast about how you read the Thrawn comic and I just finished the novel. I just started Thrawn Alliances, the sequel to the novel. They're making Thrawn Alliances into a comic book this year.
Oh, cool.
So they are going to transfer the whole story. Timothy Zahn's involved. He's the one writing the dialogue. And so if you just wait a few months, you're not even going to have to read the book. You're just going to be able to read the comic.
I want to read both.
So that was all really exciting stuff from the Lucasfilm Publishing panel. The NYCC is always a great place for them to get that news. And I'm sad it's come and gone. We're going to have to wait a whole nother year to get more news out of the Lucasfilm Publishing folks. Colin, our next news story also has to do with Batuu and Galaxy's Edge, and that is, I don't know if you saw this video floating around or not, but there's 3 brand new droids that work themselves, they roam around themselves at Galaxy's Edge, and they look like BD droids, and it's awesome.
Yeah, they do.
A green one, an orange one, and a blue one. The video makes you want to go so bad, but I want one of these guys in my house right now.
Yep. Yeah, there's definitely going to be opportunity of like little AI droids or something that can read you your messages or deliver a notification. Haven't wanted to be these droids, a Star Wars, like an R2 unit, or somebody's going to spend the money on a big giant C-3PO protocol droid.
Right. They are. It's coming. But it's cool to see the Disney animatronic folks put this stuff together because they look really good. And I bet at Galaxy's Edge seeing them roam around is a lot of fun.
You know, they have the whole droid factory. My kids got to enjoy that when we were there. Mm-hmm. And they're fun little things. You can buy personality chips for them. And at the counter, they have a deal that says, buy your own R2 astromech, $25,000. So you could spend the money, and I guess Disney, you'd have an authentic Disney astromech.
Wow. Huh.
But you know, scrolling through Reels and TikToks and stuff, there's a whole community out there who build them themselves.
Oh, yeah. The droid builder folks. They're cool.
So quick question. Cool. What droid would you build?
Oh, gosh. Huyang. I could, yeah. If I could just build any droid I wanted, Huyang.
I want to build BT-1 from the comics, the assassin astromech.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Build.
The last little thing I'll say about these guys is that they are little BD droids, and they're orange, green, and blue. And a bunch of people have suggested naming them HU3, DU3, and LU3 for Huey, Dewey, and Louie. Exactly. And I think that'd be great. Yeah, they totally awesome. Need to. I thought it was a great suggestion. They probably are.
We just don't know that yet.
Yeah.
Officially.
You're right. So, Colin, our very last news story for this afternoon has to do with the upcoming Star Wars video game entry. And it's kind of sad. It's kind of annoying. It's kind of sad because this video game entry is in Minecraft. There's a new DLC, official DLC expansion going to Minecraft called Path of the Jedi. And I'm excited. I like Minecraft. It's a neat
I've never played
game. That's crazy. That's just nuts. Who's never played Minecraft?
I'm old.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. You got me there. You got me there.
I guess I need to check it out now.
Yeah, well, with the Path of the Jedi DLC. I mean, but the thing about it is, why do we have to lean on other video games? Fortnite got their Ahsoka DLC. Minecraft got their Star Wars DLC. Can we get a Star Wars game with regular updates? I love Jedi Survivor. It was phenomenal. That game is meant to be played and beaten and put away. Can we get a game out there that you're meant to keep playing that gets some consistent updates?
Has some multiplayer capability like GTA and Star Wars?
No, I don't even care if it has multiplayer capability. I just want it to receive regular content. And we don't have anything like that right now.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
The Minecraft thing, it's cool news. It's super cool news. If you're a Minecraft fan, and if you're just a Star Wars fan, it's great because we're getting more Star Wars. But it's also maddening because we have not been getting new, good Star Wars video games with any kind of consistent content or release.
Yeah, I'm agree with you right there. The ones that they're talking about are just too far out, and just needs to be more to it.
Yeah,
You're exactly right.
Yeah, I'm glad you agree, and it's a little bit of a bummer to end our news on that way, but it is cool. It's cool that we're getting this. I mean, there's going to be all kinds of stuff. The Jedi Council's in it. It's a prequel DLC. The planets are square, as you would expect in Minecraft. It's certainly going to be fun, and it comes out pretty fast. I mean, it comes out November 7th, so less than a month from now. And so that's going to be pretty interesting. But, Colin, we're now going to move into our very last segment of the podcast, and that is our Star Wars Moment of the Week.
We would be honored if you would join us.
All right, Colin, Vader wants to know, what is your Star Wars Moment of the Week?
So, Carter, you helped out with this one a little bit. Our local regional discount bulk item store got the Trapper Wolf helmets.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Right, and I left it here for weeks, and I finally took it home. As soon as I brought it in and set it down, my son went ballistic on that thing. He's worn it several days since I opened it.
That's awesome.
Well, I didn't even get it to open it. He did. It was taped closed. He got a plastic knife out of the cabinet, opened it up, and had me. You got to put the little padding on the inside, and he couldn't quite figure that out. You got to put the chin strap on. And he has loved that thing. I think I planted a seed there.
Yeah,
I think you helped me plant a seed there
good.
with that Trapper Wolf helmet.
Yeah.
And so we got these at a heck of a discount. They're like $75 on Amazon, and we got them for considerably less than that.
Yeah, and they retailed at like $140.
Yeah.
We got them. Yeah, we got them for a song. For sure. I was happy to put mine on my shelf, but that doesn't compare anything to maybe getting Charlie his first steps into a wider world.
Yeah, and it plays sounds. It plays droid noises if you tap it, or more sounds if you hold it down. And I'm assuming these helmets are all over the country. They might have been snatched up, but you need to go check them out at probably a discount retailer like TJ Maxx. Ours is called Ollie's. I've never been in there, but somebody has one somewhere. You can get it for a heck of a deal. And if not for yourself, to be a fun little cosplay thing, or give it to your kid to let them bonk around the hall in it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm happy to hear that. I'm very happy to hear that. I already kind of tipped my hand on my Star Wars Moment of the Week, but I started reading Thrawn Alliances. I got the hardcover book on eBay, and so I'm diving into it right now. I'm almost done. I got it like 3 days ago, but it's just so good. I mean, the Thrawn books are something else. Timothy Zahn, don't miss. I'm really enjoying it, and so it's worth the read, and I would recommend it to anybody. And having watched Ahsoka, now getting to see what Thrawn knows about Anakin Skywalker, it's awesome.
Yeah, I can't wait to pick that up too.
Yeah, it's a good read. You definitely need to check it out. But Colin, that wraps up today's podcast. We're finished, short and sweet. It was after coming off of Ahsoka, 2.5, 3 hour episodes. It's kind of nice to get back to the hour-and-a-half format for a week. That doesn't mean we're stopping. We got a lot of exciting stuff in the pipe. We've got our episode schedule finished through the rest of the year, and so guys, we've got a lot of exciting stuff to come.
And we're going to roll right into Skeleton Crew. I'm really looking forward to that. The future's bright with Star Wars and with Star Wars Station.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that Skeleton Crew trailer. I hope it comes out sometime soon. Maybe sometime in November. Thanksgiving. Maybe that's my prediction for that trailer. Thanksgiving. I just thought of that, but maybe it'll come out. But I don't know. It's a little close to January. We'll see. But I'm really, really excited for it. I'm excited to keep doing the podcast, and I'm excited to keep hearing from you guys. We have so many engaging communities that you can join. We've got a poppin' Discord. We've got a very active Facebook group in the Star Wars Station Cantina. Please go join both of those communities. Come say hi to us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Station Media. We're doing stuff over there all the time. You guys can check us out on Instagram at SW_station. You can find us on Twitter at StarWars.station. And guys, if you're listening to us, you found us somewhere on a podcatcher platform. So when you're done listening to this episode, please leave us a 5-star review. We really appreciate them. They help us grow the most, and we just like reading them. We just like hearing you guys say nice things about us.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the shout-outs we've been getting on Twitter. Who are some of those people?
Yeah, well, we were on the Scarif.
Yeah,
that's
right.
the Scuttlebutt podcast, and he mentioned our disagreement about Henry Cavill and Ray Stevenson. You're a nut for your opinion on that.
I don't remember what it was. That's substance.
Well, if people want to know, they can check out our last episode. Suffice it to say, Colin does not have a good rate on actors.
So.
But it was really funny, and we appreciate all of the hype and the shout-outs on Twitter, and we appreciate all of our listeners. Guys, you can also find us on Patreon. We love getting new patrons. It's a great community over there. That is our Station Nation community. You head over to patreon.com/Star Wars Station, and our tiers start off at $1. And so you can get a lot, and I think they're pretty good. I think that all the tiers are pretty good, but even that $1 tier, you get a lot of benefit out of that. And so please head on over to patreon.com and check it out.
Yeah, and more stuff's in the pipeline. We say that every time, but I guarantee you want to hit your boat to this one. We got places to go, stuff to do. Future's bright.
Yep, absolutely. With brand new website, StarWarsStationPodcast.com. You got to check it out. You also need to check out our stickers and T-shirts that we have for sale. And guys, until next week, all we need you to do is do one thing, and that one thing is stay wizard.